to you all to the very last session of Beyond the Frames. In the words of the famous American basketball coach Bobby Knight, the key is not the will to win. Everybody has that. It is a will to prepare to win. That is important. It is with this thought in mind, Beyond the Frames was organized to prepare you all to win. Our earnest effort was to prepare your skills in the fields of filmmaking like story idea, script writing, cinematography, editing, and so on.
What better way to end than providing an insight into film appreciation? You all might be thinking, why should we know about film appreciation when we are only going to shoot and produce a film? Here you all are missing a point because film appreciation makes one aware of the potential of cinema and also empowers the artist and audience to understand its language. To appreciate something, we need to understand it better. The previous sessions held gave you an idea about the key dynamics of the techniques of filmmaking. The next stage of this process would be to reflect on it and to appreciate it. The language of cinema is universal, which crosses all boundaries. Film, as a medium of communication, has its own grammar and methods as an audiovisual language. Film appreciation means an enlightenment to this language of cinema and to familiarize the vocabulary of the medium. To understand cinema, it is also essential to understand the timeline and milestones since the inception of cinema till today.
So, here we have with us today Miss Samina Mishra, who, in her own words, tells stories through words and pictures to throw light on the topic, making meaning with film language. Welcome, ma'am.
Ms. Amina Mishra is a documentary filmmaker, writer, and teacher based in New Delhi with special interest in media for and about children. Her work uses the lens of childhood, identity, and education to reflect the experiences of growing up in India. She is currently teaching the International Baccalaureate Film Program at Pathway School, Noida, and collaborating on Torchlight, a web journal on libraries and bookish love. She has made documentary films like The Teacher and the World, Jagrati Yatra, The House on Gulmohar Avenue, Two Lives, Stories of Girlhood, to her credit, and is currently working on documentary film on the happiness curriculum in Delhi, government schools in the schools. She has also published several books for children like Hina in Purani Delhi, My Sweet Home, Childhood Stories from the Corner of a City, and Shabana and the Baby Goat, among others. Samina Mam runs the Magic Key Center for the Arts in Childhood, a virtual resource center for children as well as adults working with and for children. We are indeed privileged to have you as our resource person. Participants may Participants requested to post their questions in the chat box during the session. Over to you, Samina ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that warm welcome and for all of you coming on I think it's kind of early for you. It's a little later for me. So thank you all for joining the session. I think it's really nice for me to see that there is so much interest in film as a medium for young people, because you're a generation that is really grown up with the visual. You're a visually literate generation in a way that my generation was not. So there are some things about the visual language which are used in film, which you are instinctively familiar with. Things that my generation, I had to actually learn, to understand how though that particular grammar works in film. But you have a kind of instinctive understanding, and what I'm going to share with you today, perhaps some of that you will suddenly notice that you knew that. You didn't really need me to tell you, but sometimes what happens is when we are able to step back and analyze how we are understanding something, that allows us actually to become better communicators. So what I'm going to share with you is really about What are the nuts and bolts of film language that allow us to create meaning, to be able to communicate an idea, a story, some kind of philosophical thought, whatever it is that we want to communicate using film. I'm going to try to take you through what are the nuts and bolts which help us to do that. And also, that helps us when we are watching other people's work. How are we responding to something? And it gives us the ability to be able to then, once we have finished watching somebody's work, to step back and say, does it really work for me? If it does, why does it work? So once we get a grasp on how these elements of film language work, we are able to both appreciate in a different way and also create, I think, in a slightly more meaningful way. So what I want to do is I'm going to start by showing you a very small thing which I did for children in our school. I just made it for Children's Day. I want you to, this is a 1 minute short. I just want you to watch it. And after that, I want to hear from you on what you think this 1 minute film is saying. Yeah. So I'm just going to share my screen.
Participants, please be interactive in the session, and you can freely interact with ma'am. She is happy to take your questions online itself. Okay, you don't have to worry that you have to post your questions in the chat box. You can directly interact with her and make the session more lively. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so I'm starting. Just tell me that you can hear the sound. Yeah, I have enabled computer sound, but in case you can't, just stop me. Listen to the mustn'ts, child.
Yeah, we can hear, ma'am.
Listen to the don'ts. Listen to the shouldn'ts, the impossibles, the won'ts. Listen to the never haves. Then listen close to me. Anything can happen, child. Anything can be. Listen to the mustn'ts, child. Okay, so can I hear from you? What do you think this film said? What did it say to you? Who's going to go? Who's always the first? The person who speaks first is the bravest. And let me tell you one thing, that there is no right answer to this. I'm not interested in, trying to see whether like it speaks to you in the same way that it speaks to someone else. It can be like there are no right answers. Everybody can respond to it differently. So just tell me, what do you think this film said to you? Or what did you feel when you were watching?
It was saying us to be brave.
It was telling you to be brave. In what way? Who was it speaking to?
The children.
Yeah, so speaking to children. So in what way was it asking the children to be brave? You're right, probably. So just tell me what you think. Like if it was asking you to be brave, in what way was it asking you to be brave? What was it asking you to be brave about? Don't be shy. Yes, I think Anchor 1, you're trying to say something, but I can't hear you.
Yes, ma'am. It is trying to say that listen to your mind, like what you want.
To what you want inside. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am.
Instead of listen to your own mind, instead of listening to
Others.
To others. Okay, good. Anyone else? Come on, come on. Or maybe you want to say it didn't say anything at all to you?
Participants, please open up.
There's nothing to feel shy about. You can just say whatever you feel, whatever comes to your mind. Someone said that it was trying to tell children to be brave. Someone said it was trying to tell children to listen to their own mind, perhaps to their own heart, to whatever it is that is inside them rather than to others. So was it the person who said it was trying to tell you to be brave? Was that what it was trying to tell you to be brave about? To be brave to listen to yourself?
What I felt was like it is trying to say us to open up ourselves, because in the starting, like there were like different doors closing, so it can be represented like we are closing our ideas to ourselves and not opening it up.
Thank you. Yes. I think all three responses, you're all correct. It is trying to tell you to listen to yourself. It's trying to tell you to what makes sense to you. And it's trying to, I think, try to say that by saying that to be open, to look out, to constantly think of possibility instead of seeing the roadblocks, instead of seeing doors shutting in your face, instead of seeing challenges, to instead of listening to the voices of others who tell you that something is not possible, instead of that, to focus on what is possible, to be able to open doors and windows, to look out, to see that even rainbows are possible, right? So you're absolutely right. And that idea came to you, Abhinav, I think you said that the shots of the doors shutting in the beginning, right? So what is it that I did? I took this poem and I thought this idea of, the mustn'ts, the don'ts, right? That's what the poem is saying first. Listen to the mustn'ts. So that means things that are not how do I communicate? For me, it was, how do I communicate this idea of the roadblocks and challenges that are placed in front of children? So how did I do that? I did that by shooting in the school and by shooting the doors that are shutting. Yeah. So the shutting of the door became an idea, like a metaphor for the idea of things that become like roadblocks and challenges that don't allow children. Yeah. The voice that says, don't do this, you can't do this, you mustn't do this, those I represented through the image. Because how do we show that? Yeah. How do we show that? These are voices, no, these are other people. This is an abstract idea. But the whole point of film is to be able to show it visually. So I did that by showing the shutting doors, by showing locks on lockers, by showing, bars, things that work as images for the idea of challenges, for roadblocks. And I also added to that the sound. What is that sound we hear? We hear the sound of, the door shutting loudly, right? So together, the sound and the picture communicated this idea which Abhinav got. And that's really what I had intended to do. So what we can see is that then film is communicating through a combination of picture and sound together. Yeah. But the genesis of film, when film began, it began as perhaps you already know, as silent cinema. Yeah. That means that there was no sound in that. But even in those days, actually, it worked with sound. It worked with sound because what they used to do is they would play the film reel, and there would be a live performance of musicians who had seen the film in advance, who had prepared what music was going to be played, and they would come in with music at the appropriate time. So if you can see that in this film also, at the end, in the beginning, we hear the sounds of the doors shutting, right? But at the end, when I'm saying anything is possible, child, anything can be, what are we seeing? We are seeing the sky, and we see some, children's drawing of a rainbow and a globe spinning. That is visually, I'm trying to communicate the idea that anything is possible, and, we can do what we want. But instead of using what is called sync sound or ambient sound, I have used music over there, which then takes over, and that music create some kind of feeling. I hope that the feeling that you got was this idea of, something uplifting, of possibility, of a happy kind of music, right? By doing that, I'm trying to use sound to also communicate a kind of emotion. Yeah. So what film does then is it is using picture and sound to communicate an idea and also a feeling. We try to work with both because it's also an experience. We want the viewer to experience feelings as they are watching something. And from those feelings, we create meaning, which can also become ideas, right? So it's a combination of both things. I think all good art, not just film, works when it provokes us to think and makes us think about, like, either we've received a new idea or we have suddenly started to see something in a new way. And it also makes us feel something. Perhaps we are able to understand another person's experience because we have felt something while seeing their story, while listening to them. Or it makes us feel that sense of, possibility, of hope, or sometimes sadness at a particular thing. So it's in the combination of the two things, the mind and the heart, that I think really good art and good cinema gets created. Yeah. So what I want to do then is to take you through what are the different elements of film language that help us to do that. Yeah. And I'm going to share with you a slide presentation. And please, at any point, if something seems, too difficult or that it's not clear, please just stop me and sort of ask me. I've kept the chat window open as well, but you're welcome to just speak up. Okay. All right. So here goes. I will share my screen again. Okay. You can all see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. So let me just keep it like this. This is fine. No, it's large enough. Okay. So what is it that creates meaning in film? The first thing that creates meaning in film and that we need to think about, and which one of you already actually had identified, which is the shutting doors in that film, it is something that we call mise en scène. Mise en scène is a French term, and it's basically means, what is in the scene. Okay. The word scene is there, so you can understand from that. It basically talks about what is present in the scene. So it's about everything that we see in the frame. So what are these things that we see in the frame? The first thing, of course, is the setting. Where is it that our story is taking place? In this film that I showed you, that 1 minute film, where is the story taking place? Come on, just speak up. This is the most obvious thing. Nobody?
School, ma'am.
School.
Yeah, that's right. So it's taking place in the school. Why do you think I chose to do it in the school? Anyone? Just guess.
And because it's a message for the children.
Absolutely. Because I'm trying to say something to the children. And it is also because the school is a site where very often doors are shut for us, because there may be people who are saying, you can't do this, you're not good at that. But it can also be a site where actually the opposite happens. If you are lucky and you have good teachers and you have a school that does that and supports you and encourages you, then it can also become a site which opens windows, which tells you that things are possible, right? So that's why I chose the setting of the school. So that's the first thing, that we have to think about what is an appropriate setting. Yeah. If I'm talking about, if I'm doing a story about a factory worker, then what will be the location that I will set it in? The most obvious one?
Factory.
Exactly, right? So that's the first thing that we think about. And this is, it seems like a very obvious thing, but it is something that we have to think about when we are talking about making a film, and when we want to put ideas together. Sometimes what seems the most obvious still needs to be thought about and broken down. Okay, so that's the setting. Then the next thing is lighting. What kind of lighting you use can actually create different kinds of meaning. Because if you have, so what is the kind of lighting that we see in this film, particularly in the second half of the film? Is it dark? Are there a lot of shadows? Is it bright? What kind of lighting is it?
Bright.
Bright.
It's bright. What is, if you maybe you didn't think about it when you were watching it, but now that I'm asking you, what do you think that bright lighting does for you? Does it communicate something to you? Does it,
Ma'am,
sorry,
mostly bright lights, it is morning. Like
it's
this.
morning? Okay,
It brings hope, ma'am.
it brings hope. Okay, yeah. So when we have bright light and when we can see things clearly, that's what we are saying. Clearly, we can see things clearly, we can imagine, right? So we are opening something out. When there are lots of dark shadows, we end up creating a mood where there is a little bit of some kind of uneasiness, where we feel things are unclear. We don't know, something may emerge suddenly and, either scare us or create some kind of difficulty. So when there is a kind of lighting where there are a lot of shadows, it creates that feeling, right? So you are communicating meaning by the kind of lighting that you have in that same location. So a school which is brightly lit and a school which has got a lot of shadows and is darkly lit, the two will have different meanings. Okay? Good so far?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
The next thing is color. Color now is connected actually to light. Those of you who are studying physics and all, you already know that color is actually about light. So the more light there is, the brighter the colors will look, isn't it? So again, the same thing. When you have lots of bright colors in a frame, or when you have something which has dull colors, or colors only of a particular tone, again, the meaning changes. It's like, imagine the rainbow in the sky, and then imagine a stormy clouds in the sky. The two create different meanings, don't they?
Yes, ma'am.
So exactly in the same way, color, which is connected to the kind of light and lighting that you use, again changes the mood, right? Then we have props. Props are basically objects that are present in the scene, right? Now these props, sometimes there are particular props which are they're more important, like we are asking the viewer to focus on them. For example, in this short film, I did that with the locks. Okay, I had close-up shots of the locks because I wanted to use that lock as a metaphor. It became a symbol for the idea of something blocking children. So the prop was the lock, but I was drawing particular attention to it. But sometimes props are just a way of being able to create the setting, which allows us to understand what kind of place the story is taking place in without our drawing too much attention to it. So, for example, if I want to say that I'm going to tell a story about a child that grows up in a middle class household, and I'm starting with the kitchen scene. There are particular kinds of props that I will keep in that kitchen. For example, a water filter, the kind of stove that I have. It will be a gas stove or an electric stove. The kind of vessels and dishes that I keep, they'll be of a certain kind, right? If I say that this is a story of a child in a working class household, and I'm starting it in the kitchen, then that kitchen will also be very different with the kind of props that there is. So, for example, instead of a water filter, I might have some kind of storage container for the water. Instead of a electric or gas stove, I might have a kerosene stove. These are the ways in which these objects may not be important in the way that the lock was in this film, but they create the setting. And they are extremely important in actually communicating because they are what creates the mise en scène. So you have to think about them. Yeah. And then finally, we come to the characters. Who are the characters who are present in the scene? And what do they do in the scene? So the characters and their movement, which is very often termed blocking, character blocking. There is a character that we want to introduce. So maybe what happens is we see this set, okay, we establish the kitchen, for example, and the character enters into the frame. That becomes a way for us to say this character is what the film is about. Yeah. Sometimes there are two characters and we want to show that they are, there's a kind of conflict between them. So what we can do apart from dialogue, so we are focusing only on the picture right now. What we can do apart from dialogue is we show the two characters. They have a kind of exchange, but then after that we see that they move away from each other. When they move away from each other, we have communicated the idea that they are not in sync. They are not on the same page. They don't agree, So the movement of characters becomes a way also of communicating meaning. Often it can also be, the way that a character, for example, walks across the frame will tell us what kind of mood the character is in and therefore communicate that mood to the audience. So if a character is happy, it's likely the character walks, in a fast pace and jumps, maybe whistling, and maybe there's a little hop, a skip. But if the character we want to communicate is a bit sad, then in that same frame, if the character is dragging himself across the scene, the meaning changes completely. Yeah. So this is related, of course, to acting, but it's not only about acting. It is about the director thinking about how the character is going to interact with the scene. And then the final thing, of course, is the costume. All this becomes really important because you can confuse the viewer if you don't think about it. Because suppose you're trying to show a middle-class child, but actually you dress the middle-class child in torn clothes, then what are you trying to say? So the audience will be wondering, why is this character dressed like that, right? You want to show an everyday kind of story, but your character is dressed in some very fanciful clothes. So the audience will get confused, right? So you have to think about all of these things which are part of the mise en scène, okay? And that is the first thing that creates meaning. Are there any questions so far, or shall I just continue? If there is any confusion, please just ask me. Are you good?
Yes, ma'am. We are good.
Okay. All right. Okay. So once we have established the scene, then we have to think of how are we actually going to shoot that scene, right? So that's the next thing, which I guess you have already spoken a little bit. Someone has raised a hand. Yes, go ahead. Someone raised a hand. Did you have a question?
Yeah, Abhinav has raised your hand. Abhinav, any doubt?
No, ma'am. I'm a person.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So to go back to this presentation. So the next thing is, how do we show the viewer the scene? Okay, so we've got a scene, we've set it up, we've thought about the characters and how the characters are moving, we've thought about the props, we've thought about the lighting, everything. But how are we going to show that scene? If you watch theater, then you know that you are sitting in the front and the stage is there for you, and basically you're watching in what is called a frontal position, and the story takes place in front of you like that. But film, because of the use of the camera, allows you to actually pick and choose what part of the scene you want to show. And that is really where the film grammar comes in. What is it that the camera is going to frame? The frame is the thing that you use to visualize once you have set up the mise en scène. So how are you composing it? And for this, we have different elements, which perhaps you've gone over this before, but I'm just going to reiterate that. For the first thing is we think about where do we place the camera? Are we going to place it in the front, like watching the entire scene like you do in theater? Are we going to just place the camera in a frontal and what we call eye level so that it gives us the entire sense of what is going to happen? Or are we going to try and shoot it from below, from on top, from the side? Where are we going to place the camera? Where we place the camera can also change the kind of meaning that is created. For example, if you think about your class, okay, just a class in progress, which has been a long time for all of us. We have not been in a classroom for a while. But if you think of your classroom, and if you place the camera where the teacher stands, maybe near the board, and you look at the class, and you can see everybody, what does it feel like? It just feels like a normal class, right? That's a normal class. And the meaning that it will create is there is a class that is going on. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
But if I now suggest to you that you take the camera and you place it right on top, like really, like as if the ceiling isn't there and you're really right on top and you are watching from on top, then what kind of meaning do you think it will create? Anyone? Come on. You've seen this kind of shot in many films. It is what is called a top angle shot. We are right really high on top, and you can just see the heads of the children, and they're like that. What kind of feeling does it create? What kind of,
Ma'am,
sorry?
for knowing the number of children like that.
Okay, so it can show the crowd. Yeah?
Yes, ma'am. And like how big that room is like that.
It can show that, how big the room is. Yes, that's true. But that also we can do if we are at eye level and in the front. We'll still get a sense of what is the number of kids and, you know, how large the room is. So anything else that a top angle may do?
It can show all
Can
the
see what they're
characters
doing.
at once.
It can show all the characters at once, but if you have what is called a wide angle shot, even from the front and eye level, that can also do that. All the characters at once. You can do that.
Ma'am,
Someone else?
We can see every child, like what they're doing.
The detail of that we will not be able to see because we'll be very high on top. Mostly we'll be able to see their heads. Anyone else? There was somebody else who was talking. One more guess. Anyone? Will the children look big or small?
small.
Children will look small. So what do you think that could possibly mean?
It shows all the characters as very small.
Yeah. And what do you think that can mean? If we make the choice of showing the children looking small, what do you think the director may be trying to say? You're on the right track. Just push your thinking a little bit more. The children are looking small. So that means?
They are a lower class children in the class with the teacher.
They are, sorry, can you repeat that?
They are lower grade children, like first or second class.
Okay. Yeah, that may be. But I think what it will do is if we end up, whether they are small children or whether they are grade 8 or grade 10, if we shoot from high on top, we end up making them look small in this big space, and we create this feeling that the children actually don't have too much power, that they are in a room and in a system where they are not able to do very much about it if we only show them from there. Now, if I reverse it and I shoot from below, what is called a low angle, right? So the camera is below the children and the camera is looking up at them. Imagine that now. Is the child looking big or small?
Big.
Big.
The child is big. The child is looking big then. And what does that do? When we do that, when we show the child looking big, then we are trying to communicate something completely different, isn't it? We are giving the child some power.
And we
Yeah,
are giving it more importance.
we are giving it more importance because we are making it big in the frame. So this is just a small example that based on what angle we shoot from, we can give the character a certain kind of subjective feeling that the character has more power, or the character has less power, the character is important or the character is not important. We can create that feeling. Nobody has said it, but the picture is going to communicate that feeling. And you see this all the time in the films that you watch, in advertising that you watch. Camera angle is used in this way to communicate. The word we use is subliminal messaging. This is the message that comes through when we are not consciously thinking about it. We understand and interpret it without thinking consciously about it. It makes a person look more powerful. So often we may see, if there are kind of sort of speeches, etc., of politicians, the way that they will be shot is to make them prominent in the frame, whether it is through the use of the angle, or the other thing is that shot size, how big or small something is in the frame, it gives them prominence and that gives them importance. So the subliminal messages, they are important. And that comes through. That comes through in news, that comes through in advertising, that comes through in film, right? So how we use the camera in terms of where we place it and how big we keep something in terms of shot size. So, you have what is called a wide establishing long shot, which is the entire scene. You can have mid shot, which is about sort of, like up to the waist kind of shot. And you can have close up where you go into a detail where the face is big, or if it is a close up of an object, then that object becomes important. For example, what I did with the lock, it's a close up because I want you to think about the lock. I want you to interpret that idea, right? So the kind of shot size that we use also creates meaning. And then there are different rules of composition which allow us to create clearer meaning. So, for example, there is what is called the rule of thirds. So basically in the rule of thirds, if you take the frame and you kind of draw imaginary lines, two imaginary lines to break the frame up into three parts, then you do that horizontally, you do that vertically. Then in the intersecting points, if you place something, that thing gets an importance. So in that rule, it is, if you frame in that kind of way, then you, if a particular character is important to you, then you will try to place it on the intersection point, and you will create that sense of, importance. Another kind of compositional rule is leading lines. So, you may have you may have seen this. Leading lines and perspective are used very often on bridges or on roads, or paths, and they kind of go into the distance in a kind of perspective. Yeah, that perspective, and at the where the lines meet in that imaginary spot somewhere in the distance, you place something, automatically our eye goes to that, and automatically then we understand that that thing is important. So these are all different ways in which we use the visual, and we use the language of the visual to communicate the idea of what is happening, what is important, etc. Okay. The next thing that the camera does is that it uses camera movement, right? Now, camera movement can be that you are moving in what we call pans, which is a horizontal movement. It can be, I'm going to stop sharing for a bit and so that you can see my gestures. So a pan is a kind of horizontal movement. A tilt is a vertical movement. What this kind of movement does is it creates a relationship. For example, let's say there is a child who's looking for his homework in the morning, yeah, and he cannot find it, and we have established that in the scene. And then we cut to a shot in which the child is looking, pulling out things, but we move from the child to the bed and to below the bed, and we see the notebook lying over there. The child has not seen it, but the viewer has seen it, the audience has seen it. So we have created that relationship between the child who cannot find the homework and the lost homework which is lying at the bottom of the bed. We don't have to say anything. The child's mother doesn't have to say anything. The child doesn't have to say any dialogue. We have created that meaning just with that one shot. And that creates for better storytelling. One of the things which you must have perhaps learned in your English lessons is the idea of show, not tell, isn't it? Even when you write, you're asked to show, not tell. Because when you tell, it's boring. So everything is being told to us. Whereas if you show, you allow the reader or the viewer to engage and to interact with what is being said, both visually or in text, and you allow them to interpret. And that is always a much more valuable experience, right? So the pan and tilt camera movement allows us to do that. There are other kinds of movement also, what are called tracking movements. So, you must have seen, like as if the camera is walking. Immediately we understand that it is actually somebody who is walking. You understand that. And so, okay, this is going to lead us to something. Yeah. So there's a variety of movements that you can do. And again, those create meaning. Yeah. There are other things also that that cinematography does. For example, there is exposure, which is again related to what we had spoken about in mise en scène with lighting. How do we play with the light, and how do we make do we make the shot look dark or normal or bright? All of this changes the kind of meaning that we have. How do we play with the focus? Where is the focus in the frame? You can have a wide frame, but you can play with what is called depth of field, right? That in the frame. So for example, if you look at me right now, the way that this camera has framed me, everything is more or less in focus, right? The doors are in focus. I'm kind of in focus. So it's not the importance in the frame that comes to me is because I'm in the center of the frame. I'm getting more light, right? There are other ways in which we can do that, which is where this part could have been in soft focus. You must have seen many portrait shots like that, where only the face is in sharp focus and the black background is kind of blurred. That again becomes a way to say who is important in the frame, where do I want the audience to look at? And then sometimes what happens in a shot, that focus shifts. So I would become in soft focus and this would become in sharp focus. Immediately, when we do that, we have created this idea that something here is important. So the audience then expects that either something is going to happen with this door, maybe someone is going to walk through it, maybe something is going to happen to the door itself. So we've created that meaning. No one has said anything, but the visual has communicated that meaning. Okay? Clear so far, or is this too much information?
I'm clear.
Okay. I'm going to take you through what are the other elements very quickly, sound and editing. And then I will show you a small clip and we can then talk about how we can see some of these things actually working in that. Yeah. So sound, you saw in that film that I've used spoken word. So that spoken word is the recitation of that poem, and that becomes important. Let me just share this so you can see what are the different elements of the sound. So spoken word is, it becomes either there can be dialogue, or it can be what is called voiceover, which is what I did in that film with the recitation of the poem. The words that come on with particular visuals then create that meaning, right? When I'm using the shutting of the doors and you hear the voice saying, listen to the Musson's child, it's the combination of the two that made you think of this idea of, something coming as a block. Yeah. So spoken word then creates meaning in the film. We also spoke briefly about music and how music can create that feeling. Sometimes you'll see in chase sequences, the kind of music that is used, or in horror films, before something has happened, the camera is just moving inside something and the lighting is dark and the music is ominous. So that also creates what is called, what we can call emotional meaning in the film, right? We think of a certain thing, we feel in a certain way. And then there are effect sounds. I use this with, for example, the shutting of the doors, dung, dung, dung. It becomes an effect. And it works too. What is the effect that it does? It creates this feeling of something stopping the child, something constantly stopping the child, right? So effect sounds also create meaning. And then we have what is critical to the making of a film, which is editing. Editing is about the order of what we see, how we see something. A story does not always have to begin at the beginning. A story, as you know, in flashbacks begins at the end. And sometimes stories can begin in the middle. There are many filmmakers who have played with this idea. There's a very famous film, I don't know if you all have seen it. Maybe some of you are too young, but some may have seen it, called Pulp Fiction, which played exactly with this, that the story was not told in a linear way. You don't only begin at the beginning and then go to the middle and then go to the end. That's one way of telling the story. And there is no, for some stories that works. That's the best way to tell it. But there may be other stories which it may be interesting to tell by starting in the middle, because something really important happens, which is actually in the middle, and that becomes like the hook. So when you're editing, you think about the order of the narrative. How do we tell that story? And then you think about the order of the shots that you're joining, right? How do you create meaning by the shots that you join? So what did I do in that short film? I began with the shutting of the doors. I've started with the shutting of the doors and then moved to the lock, right? So the idea was things get blocked, things get blocked, things get blocked, and here's the lock. And then I come to the opening of the door. And with the opening of the door, I'm moving to the window and the sky. So when I bring it in that order, I'm presenting the challenge, and then I'm presenting that there is still a possibility, because I want to end on a feeling of hope. But if I had done the opposite, then I end with a feeling of hopelessness, that everything is blocked, right? So I completely change the meaning if I turn the order around. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Part of editing also, apart from what we do with the visual, part of editing is also about how we add more stuff to the visual. So for example, what is the sound that we add to it? Is there some text to be add to it? All this also creates other layers of meaning, which we are then able to unpack, with which we can allow the audience to interpret, right? Now, it's really important to understand that all of these, mise-en-scène, cinematography, sound, editing, these are the elements of film language that we think about when we are making a film. But we can only really speak to ourselves, like that, what works for us. We make a certain choice because we think this is what it's going to say. We cannot actually anticipate what the audience is going to say. We can only imagine it, right? It's kind of guessing. But I cannot say for certain that someone else is going to feel and read the image and the order of the images in exactly the way that I do. So that is what is called subjectivity, right? All art and film is subjective, and we have to allow for that subjectivity. So when I said to you, tell me what you felt when you watched this film, it was this subjectivity that there are no right answers, there are no wrong answers. It's only about how you respond to something, right? So we work with these elements of mise en scène, of cinematography, of sound and editing. But after that, we have to let that work go out into the world and let people engage with it in the way that they want. Sometimes they will respond in exactly the way that we did, but sometimes they may not. And sometimes they may be completely different. Sometimes some part of it may be the same. And that's okay, as long as we are clear about why we did what we did. So I know many of you didn't speak, so I can't say for how many of you that short film worked, but I can say from the ones who did speak that to a large extent, you got what it is that I wanted to say with that short film. You understood that I'm saying that it's important for children to be able to understand what is it that they want to do and to strive for that without actually focusing on the voices of others who may be negative voices, right? So the ones who spoke, I feel you did get what I wanted to say, and so I'm happy for that. But there may be others who didn't get it, for whom it didn't work in the same way. That's okay. That's subjectivity. Yeah. So now what I want to do is I'm going to show you, since we've talked so much about this, I thought I'll show you a small clip from one of my documentary films. And we'll just talk about what that section says. And if we can just identify which are the things that have been used to be able to bring out those meanings. Is that okay? And then we can do a question answer session. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah? Okay. So just give me a second. I will start that. There was a lot of talking, wasn't it? Okay. So this is an excerpt from a film that one second. One second.
Life's ambition for.
Okay, this is an excerpt from a film, from a documentary that I made called The House on Gulmohar Avenue, which looks at the idea of home and belonging and identity. And this is sort of an excerpt from the film, which is with a young woman who also lives in this neighborhood that the film is set in. Okay? And here you go.
What exactly घर से बहुत मोहब्बत होती है पता नहीं क्यों
My life's ambition
From
fulfilled.
here, I only intend going to the graveyard.
Of course this is my home, definitely it's my home, I have grown up here.
For a while, home is what you're born to. There are some homes you can never leave. Some you can never go back to. Sometimes home is brick and mortar. Sometimes a person. Sometimes a belief. Home is a place where you feel at home.
I don't know what's the idea of the average Muslim girl is really like, because people sometimes are surprised when they ask me my name. What's your name? Farah. Okay, Farah what? I said, okay, Farah Khan. Oh, you're a Muslim. So they're quite surprised at looking at me. So I asked them, what do you think? What a Muslim girl looks like with kajal eyes, long hair, maybe a dupatta on her head. That's what maybe the idea people have, which is not true at all. I remember when I used to go to school, people used to watch. I was wearing a uniform. I mean, which has been allowed everywhere. Because most of the girls maybe wear salwar kameez as a uniform, or I used to wear shirt and a skirt with my shoes as a uniform. So it used to be a little strange for them. And of course, it's been years now, people have grown up, they started going out and working.
Your parents moved here because they wanted you to be part of a community. But what do you think about it now?
See, the kind of work which I'm doing, which is the priority right now in my life, if given a choice, I would like to move out, maybe. Because I'm really not comfortable with the idea, because see, my parents do get worried when girls come back home late at night, but here the problem is that they know that I'm safe, nothing is wrong with me, that I'll be coming home, I'll be getting dropped and whatever. Maybe their whole idea that my neighbors would, if they see me coming at this hour, what would they think, and they actually talk like that. I remember a day actually when my friend dropped me from work. I was on a bike with him. I was like, oh, you were coming back with a guy on a bike, and they're like, speculations like that. So these kind of things make me a little uncomfortable. Hello, I don't think so. I'm answerable to you, but still. What I normally do is I just walk across to take an auto or a rickshaw to the friend's colony. There was a change of environment suddenly, the change of people, the ambience. For example, when I'm walking in Zakir Nagar, I'll be a little cautious maybe. Okay, fine, somebody's looking, so I have to walk a certain way. And maybe when you're walking on any other place in Delhi, you'll be like, on your own, no? Nobody would, it doesn't make a difference. It's like, just like that. So here it's like being a little cautious. Again, I'll say it's like holding a hot glass, in your hand. So when you're walking here, you know that it's hot. But suddenly when you go across, it suddenly does not exist.
All right. Okay. So I've spoken a lot. I've talked and talked and talked. So now it's your turn. What I'd like you to do is to just tell me, based on the stuff that we talked about, all the mise-en-scène details, cinematography, sound, editing, what is the meaning that came across to you in this sequence? And if you can connect that to any of those things that we talked about. But you've got to talk now. Come on. Who's going to be the first one?
Ma'am, it was about the freedom of that girl. Like, she was a Muslim, but when she went out, like, she didn't have scarf. Then when she said her name, it was a Muslim name. So when they asked, like, you are a Muslim, and like they have in their mind that if it's Muslim, like girl means they'll wear scarf, like that and all.
Correct. Correct. Absolutely. So can you connect this? So you got that. Okay, very good. Can you connect that to what we have talked about? All the different elements, mise-en-scène, cinematography, sound, editing. Can you connect it to any of these things and say how you understood this?
Ma'am, when the girl is speaking, like she's on in a bigger frame.
Correct.
So it was focusing on.
Yeah.
Ma'am, she was given more importance because that camera was from down, it was facing on her. She had more importance in that.
Okay. Yes. Abhinav, you were saying something. I cut you in the middle, right?
No, ma'am. Like what I wanted to say was that she was the main character. Like the camera was mainly focused on her. Like
yes.
She was shown bigger in the frame.
So she is important in the frame. Both of you have said that. Yes. So the most important way in which this idea is getting communicated is actually through what she is saying. The girl is speaking, as you said, one of you said, right? So that becomes a way of communicating that. We understand that she's an important character because she is very often the only character in the frame, and very often she is big in the frame. Very good. Yes. Someone else? Any other things that you can connect this to? Think of the elements of mise-en-scène that we talked about. Okay, what is it? Setting, props, character blocking, how the character walks and interacts in the frame. Think of all of those things in the opening where we see her for the first time. Yeah, what is the idea over there that we are talking about? As one of you said, it is that she's a Muslim, but very often she is asked like, oh, the people look at her in a surprised way because she is not, dressed in what they imagine Muslim girls dress like, right? So do you think you can connect that to that idea, communicating that idea to the mise-en-scène elements that we talked about?
Yes, ma'am. That to the costume.
Okay.
Costumes.
Costume, because she is not wearing a burqa or headscarf or anything. She is wearing pants and a shirt. So costume becomes important. Yes. What else?
Ma'am, the streets
Many
were
other
shown.
The street.
many other women were shown wearing burqa.
Right. So she stands out because other women are wearing the burqa. What about the street?
Yes, ma'am. The streets were shown.
What
That
about that?
like the
And the
props.
people were shown like small, so they are not given that much of importance.
In relation to her.
Yes, ma'am.
Hmm. We see them in the background normally, but she is always in the foreground. She is important. Yes. Think of, where do we see her? We see her entering a kind of supermarket, right? And so, what is the setting that we have established? A supermarket is a kind of modern marketplace, no? And what is the idea that we are trying to talk about is that the idea of Muslim women is normally, the stereotype idea is that they are not modern. They are wearing the burqa and the headscarf, and they are oppressed and kept in homes and all of that. That's the idea we're trying to say, is that this is the stereotype. But look, this is another kind of Muslim woman. Here she is wearing shirt and pant, and she enters what is like a modern marketplace, and she's interacting with objects which all kinds of people in all kinds of places do. So what are we, without saying it, we have drawn that juxtaposition, that that is a stereotype and this is one reality. No? So we have used actually mise-en-scène. We have thought about setting. Where should we shoot her? We think about that when we use setting. And with the setting, of course, because this is a documentary, so it comes with all the props and all. It's not like I have created the props, right? Because this is a documentary, she is wearing the clothes that she normally does, right? So I'm not created that. In fiction, we think about the character and we make the character do things and we set up the set, etc. But this, I've thought about mise-en-scène by making a choice about where I'm going to shoot her, right? I could have shot this interview inside her home in a closed room. I might have got, in fact, better sound, but I didn't do that. Why didn't I do that? Because I wanted to be able to say they are out in the public in the same way as all kinds of other women. So you see, that's how one uses mise-en-scène and the different elements to communicate the idea. You got the idea. And the most important thing in that was, of course, herself speaking. We gave her the space to speak for herself. That's the most important thing. But all of these things also add to that. So we are saying, we're asking, we're telling the audience, you don't only have to take her word for it. Here it is. You can also see it. You can also see that this is how she interacts. Anything else? Anybody?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in the shop, when she was there, she was standing with two men. That shows that what others can do, she also can do. She's free to do. Like everyone is equal.
Correct. Correct. Anything else? Okay, so I'm glad. I mean, you have been able to sort of break it down and make these connections. So I'm glad. I know there's been like a lot of things I've bombarded you with, and some of this stuff is something that will make sense maybe later. You just have to let it be in your head and it stays. And when you're watching something else, it'll make sense. But for now, we have some time. So this is actually should really be time to throw open for questions, because we have about 20 minutes. And I would very much like to be able to answer any questions that you have. So if you have any questions, Sujata, do you want to encourage your students to ask questions?
Yes, ma'am, sure, let me do it. The students, please put up your questions. You all are so clear. Everything is clear. No doubt. Sometimes
So
in
I
class
believe
also it happens, right?
You all are going to make films after this, is it?
Yes, yes, they are going to be. They are already in the process. They have started with the process.
So why don't you tell me if you think something that we talked about today is going to help you in your process? Or why don't you tell me a little bit about what it is that you're working on?
Yeah, students, come on. Be
Abhinav,
interactive.
come on, Abhinav, tell me what is your idea?
Ma'am, we are actually in the scripting stage and it's over, ma'am. We are going to start our shooting next week, ma'am.
So what is your film about?
Our script is about an idea where we are explaining about the usefulness and harm caused by mobile phone.
By mobile phones. So actually then the mobile phone is not just a prop, it's a prop that is actually a character, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So this idea of harm, yeah, now that's a very abstract thing, no? Like what is it that you're saying, that what is the harm of the mobile phone? What is it that you're going to say?
Yes, ma'am, we are like trying to show where how it affects a
Ma'am, may
normal.
I interrupt? May I interrupt? I'm sorry. I'm very sorry, ma'am.
No.
Since it's a group of all the schools, maybe they may not be free enough to express their ideas now because it's a competition.
Oh, I see. Okay. Oh, no. Let's not do that.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Could you stop me in time? No, so I'm just saying that when you are, if you're, all of you are making films that have these kind of abstract ideas of what is good and what is bad, then you have to think visually to communicate that idea, right? What we call connotative meaning, where we use metaphor and symbol, like how I use the lock, right? So you have to think of images like that to be able to communicate these abstract ideas.
Children, you may ask your doubts regarding the process. Like maybe you would have undergone some problem while shooting. Maybe you had faced some difficulty. Based on all that, you may question and find out how you can resolve those problems.
2020 now.
No questions. Are you shy or are you sorted?
Can you forget this?
Anything like you maybe in your script you want some idea, you can ask. Be interactive. I don't know. Today they are quite silent. Usually we find that these students are so interactive. I don't know today.
So would you rather see something, because there's a lovely little short film which I thought I can show you. So if you don't have any questions, then I'd like to show you that.
It's not a question, ma'am. Like the short film you showed before, like I feel like when she talks like how the society thinks about her, and when they show the street, ma'am, it's shown a little. The light is a little bit darker, so it's the society is kind of not for her.
Okay,
Shown in a little dark light.
yeah. So yeah, sometimes because this is a documentary film, so like, and I'm shooting in what is called natural light, so I don't have too much control over that. Yeah, what I do have control is that in post-production sometimes we work with what is called color correction, and we can make something look a little bit brighter or a little bit duller than it is, but only to some extent. But in this case, I would say that I do not think that the lighting is something that I used too much to communicate that idea. Yes, I wanted to also communicate this idea. So there are two things in that segment. One is the notion of what is the stereotype of the Muslim woman, which she breaks, and the second is that that what I'm trying to say is that there are all kinds of Muslim women. So the second idea is that if you are this kind of Muslim girl, then being in a neighborhood which has certain kinds of people can also become a bit of a disadvantage, because you are looked at as somebody who doesn't exactly fit in. So this idea of belonging, so that it is a little bit of both, that on the outside, outside of a neighborhood which is largely Muslim, you are looked at like, oh, really? Are you Muslim? Shouldn't you be wearing a burqa? And in the neighborhood which is Muslim, you are looked at like, you don't exactly fit, So I'm trying to communicate the two things. But I don't think that I used lighting too much in that. It was more the use of the space and setting, and the ways that somebody said, that the other characters are seen always in the background and she's more prominent. Those kinds of things, visual sort of composition, that I used more to communicate those ideas, because this is a documentary film and I'm shooting in natural light conditions. Okay, so Sujata, I feel if they don't have questions, as a short film, which is I use very often in my teaching. So may I please show that to them?
Yeah, ma'am, please. It will be very interesting if you can show that.
Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen and do that. So this is a film by a director called Michel Gondry, who has made lots of ad films and also made films in Hollywood. And I'm going to just do that. It's a film called Detour. It was shot on an iPhone.
Ok. Bon, lui, ça ira. Faut que j'écrive Détour maintenant. Détour, un film de... Ah bah c'est moi.
C'est le grand départ, enfin, soi-disant. Comme toujours, je suis la première, ou bien tous les autres sont les derniers.
Marseille, la boule.
Tu vois, on allait tout oublier.
Papa, on prend mon vélo.
Non mais j'allais pas l'oublier. Hein. Bonnes vacances.
Bonnes vacances.
Quand est-ce qu'on arrive?
Ah non, ça va pas recommencer, on vient juste de partir.
Quand est-ce qu'on arrive? Quand est-ce qu'on arrive? Pas encore parti,
loin d'être arrivé. Quand est-ce qu'on arrive?
pas encore parti, loin d'être arrivé.
Quand
on arrive? Quand est-ce qu'on arrive? Quand est-ce qu'on arrive?
Quand est-ce qu'on arrive? Quand est-ce qu'on arrive? Quand est-ce qu'on arrive?
Vas-y, t'es prêt? Hein? Allez, bon.
Vas-y.
Attends. Allez.
Vas-y, continue. droite, gauche, droite, gauche, droite, gauche, droite, gauche. Allez, on souffle. Gauche, droite, gauche, droite, gauche, droite, gauche, droite, gauche, droite, gauche.
Mon tricycle!
Oh non, chérie! Je t'avais dit de pas prendre ce tricycle. T'es trop grande pour lui maintenant.
Non, c'est toi qui es trop grand. T'aurais dû faire du promeneur.
C'est malin maintenant, qu'est-ce qu'on fait?
Bah oui, mais ça a cassé, ça a cassé.
Je vais partir sur une île déserte. Après la perte de son tricycle, on ne revit plus jamais Jeanne. C'est quoi la différence entre un canard et un poulet?
Grand Prix, la victoire pour les vieux. Grand Prix jeune, la victoire pour les jeunes. Grand Prix, la victoire pour les vieux. Grand Prix jeune, la victoire pour les jeunes. Par trop d'expérience, acné et inconscience, lenteur et réflexion, vitesse et précipitation.
Bonsoir papa, bonsoir maman.
Bonsoir, Jeanne.
Bonsoir les deux.
Bonsoir toute seule.
Il y a un chien dans la tente, maman.
Mais non, rendors-toi, ma chérie.
Mon petit vélo adoré, toi que j'aimais tant, dis-moi où tu es parti et je viendrai te retrouver.
Ah, écoute, vraiment, c'est délicieux.
Merci.
Papa, tu veux une carotte?
Ah oui, je veux bien ma puce. Qui a soif?
Tu veux du maïs, mon amour?
Oui, maman.
Je vous préviens, j'en prends un pour ta...
le souffle apaisant des promesses du temps.
Oublie-moi jusqu'au sommet. Tu l'as pas dit tout à l'heure, je vois pourquoi.
Non, mais c'est moi qui devrais dire, tu vois.
Oui,
Tu vois.
et alors pourquoi tu l'as pas dit?
Oh, le pauvre. Il a perdu ses parents. Bon, je rentre, Marcel.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Alors les filles, aujourd'hui on a tataki de thon. Le duo de sardinette et d'anchois d'Espagne.
Maman fait l'accent du midi, c'est pas du tout drôle.
Le jambon de montagne. L'assiette la buratina tartare de tomates.
Tada!
C'est mon anniversaire.
C'est tous les jours ton anniversaire, mon petit chat. Oui, c'est bien. Allez, faut pédaler.
Encore une fois. Attendez. Allez, au revoir.
Non. Tiens, regarde, là, ça. C'est ta surprise.
Merci, Tu sais, ici la mer, elle reste à tes pieds toute la journée. Mais dans d'autres pays, très loin, la mer, elle part tout au bout du sable. C'est Marcel qui me l'a dit. Mais ça s'appelle pas la mer, c'est l'océan. Je crois.
All right. So this is a film called Detour. I'm putting it in the chat window. It's by a director called Michel Gondry. And sorry, I think it's just gone. I put it for everyone. And it is available on YouTube. So you can also watch it again. As you can see, this used all of these things that we talked about, you know, the details of mise en scène, the prop that is a character, the prop that is just communicating a sense of the setting. What is the setting? The use of lighting. Remember the scene where the new bicycle is given to the girl? Suddenly the light dims, it becomes dark. Yeah. What is it communicating? That the bicycle is feeling sad, right? That it has been forgotten by the little girl. So it uses all the elements of mise en scène, the way it uses camera. Yeah. Look at the scene in which, you know, that man is looking through the binoculars, and how the size of the bicycle changes because of the camera angle, no? And creates this feeling of, we don't know, it's unreal or real, isn't it? Very often the way the bicycle is shot as it is on the road, we don't know whether it is a kind of fantastic approach with the bicycle being shown as almost an animate being, or it's just the bicycle is being propelled by wind. We don't know whether it's reality, you know, the reality of the wind. So it leaves that room for us to interpret. And it is able to do that because it has used all of these elements of mise en scène, which is really the craft of filmmaking. It has used that so well. So I will leave you with that film and with all of these ideas in your head. And I hope that when you make your films, you will think about these things and look at the images that you create and the sound that you put with them. Yeah. Thank you.
Wonderful session, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Over to the anchors. And participants, please, you may fill the feedback form and the attendance form. You will be getting your certificates very shortly. Now let's proceed. Anchors, over to the anchors.
Thank you, ma'am. It has been a very enlightening session. I'm sure the participants who dream to be filmmakers one day has learned to look at films from a totally different perspective as well. May I request all participants and teachers on duty to switch their cameras on for a group photograph.
So they're from different cities, is it? The schools, these children?
Yes, ma'am. The all different schools are there. Around 17 schools are participating from different corners of the country. Participants, kindly switch on your cameras. Yes, anchors, you may proceed.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
It's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks to all present here. I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to Ms. Samina Mishra for sparing her precious time and effort in imparting this informative session on the importance of understanding films and the language it conveys. Thank you, ma'am. Heartfelt thanks to the school coordinators, teacher in charges, and participants from the various Indian schools in Oman for attending the sessions under Beyond the Frames. I'm sure this and all the previous workshops would have taught and sharpened your skills in the various fields of filmmaking.
On behalf of the students, it is my great pleasure to say a big thank you to the Board of Directors, Indian Schools in Oman, who has provided this platform to our budding student filmmakers. I express our gratitude to the principals and vice principals of all participating schools for motivating and encouraging their students to attend the sessions. The members of the School Management Committee of Indian School Sur deserves a special thanks for providing the support needed for conducting the sessions. Let me also thank the principal, vice principal, and the teachers of Indian School Sur for bringing in eminent resource persons, planning, implementing, and making this event possible. Last but not the least, thanks to all my friends of Indian School Sur who has hosted the training sessions from the beginning to the end.
We wind up Beyond the Frames with a quote from the journalist, linguist, and author M.F. Munzajar. Build your life on your dreams because dreams never have bad endings. All the very best to you all in your effort to come out with wonderful films and documentaries. It's me, Prachi, signing off along with Aman. Bye bye. Have a nice day and great year ahead. Happy 2021.
Thank you, students. Before leaving, please fill the feedback form. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, and all the very best to the films that you make. I hope in the future, I will be watching some of you make films, and I'll watch them in screens and theaters somewhere in the world. Good luck.
Definitely. Thank you. Participants, please make sure to fill the forms.